On today's show, we're starting a whole new thing called Contractor Highlight Series.
Don't hang up that phone. We've found what you're looking for. Welcome to the Let's Talk Cabling podcast with Chuck Bowser, RCDD. Well, seeing how we're pulling Category 6A, the most powerful twisted pair in the world, you got to ask yourself this one question. Did I pull 295 or 300 feet? Well, do you feel lucky? Do you, punk? In this podcast, you'll learn the differences between a 66 and 110 punch tool, the proper way to install a support cable, along with testing and certifying the cable. What exactly does RCDD stand for? Registered Communications Distribution Designer. Just the expert you need to ensure your cable plant performs exactly as designed. The elite professional, knowledgeable, and experienced in leading-edge ICT design principles. So join us as we talk about the ever-changing world of telecommunications. From ISP to OSP, from copper to fiber, design to installation. Now, send the new guy to the truck for a bucket of dial tone and the cable stretchers, while you listen to an informative program on telecommunications.
And the first contractor that we're highlighting today is Encompass Connect. Now, Mark Higgason is a fan regular on the show. He's been in the live stream question and answer things. He sends me stuff all the time. He's always answering the acronym challenge. So he's a regular to the show. So welcome to the show, Mark. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm honored to be here and be your first guest in this chapter. I've been a fan for quite a while. Sometimes I'm on job or doing something while the podcast is going on, so I'm in and out. But yeah, I'm a regular fan. I'm glad that you do it. Thank you.
I appreciate that. One of the reasons I do the podcast is it's not for fame. It's not for money. Well, it's definitely not for money right now, but it's to make the impact, to educate and encourage people in our industry. And so I hear feedback like that just, it fuels me to keep doing this. Because I admit, there are sometimes I'm like, oh man, it's a Monday. I got to do a podcast tonight. And I got to, it's like any other job. You got to kind of work through those challenges and stuff. So I appreciate that feedback. Why don't you go ahead and tell us, I'm sorry.
I think also like you, I kind of feel a little indebted to the ICT world that, I'd really like to eventually pay this knowledge back. So.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about Encompass Connect and you and how you got into the ICT industry.
Sure. Well, it actually goes back. It's the same company under a different name, but many years ago. I originally got into electronics through RC cars, and that worked its way into musical instruments and then techno sound rave setups and recording. But then I kind of found that really wasn't what I wanted to end up doing. I liked the technology, so I immediately kind of fell into installs. Originally started out doing just sound systems, but then video got tacked on, surveillance systems, POS, telephone. Then they wanted networking. And we picked up the phone, we delivered results, we did what we said, and they just kept adding services onto us. So ICT was kind of, wasn't really what I ended up wanting to get involved in. It was just a slow progression from audio-visual technology into ICT. But all of the components for AV eventually started falling under the network. And now everything is a pure network technology. So I got into ICT to really want to have a thorough understanding of the framework for everything that we were doing. And Encompass wanted to set out to have that strong foundation for all of our systems. So that's kind of who we are. We deliver surveillance, audio video systems, networking, access points. We design, install, maintain, and service. So we're a full spectrum outfit.
So what area of the country do you provide these services?
We provide these services nationwide. We can manage technology projects. Now, we work with all sorts of contractors in all sorts of areas. We're not necessarily pulling cable on job sites, but we are managing the install, commissioning, and maintaining.
Gotcha. It's not the first time that I heard somebody say, I didn't plan on going into ICT. I kind of fell into it.
I'd like to meet someone that planned on it.
Thank you.
I don't think it happens.
I've said that many times in high school. I've never heard one person say, I want to be a cable puller when I grow up.
I mean, I've heard of glorious phone jobs from a different era that,
Right.
you know, had just incredible benefits and pay scales. But I've never seen these jobs, you know, within the 90s or plus. So,
Oh yeah, you're talking about the PBX engineers.
oh yeah, just
Yeah.
you know, all sorts of AT&T jobs that were fantastic that I don't think exist or are just
Right.
simply part of someone else's job now.
Right. It's early in the first half of my career. Most people, when they came in the ICT industry, it was usually as a stepping stool to get to something else. I want to be a network engineer. I want to be a PBX engineer. I want to be a something else. And now I'm finding, because of the complexity of cabling and all the stuff that we're doing, you know, building automation, power over Ethernet for lighting and voice and data systems, I'm finding that going backwards. I'm finding people coming to our industry instead, you know. So that's kind of an interesting observation. And would you say that your observations are the same, or is yours different?
No, I think they really see it as kind of like a solid platform after they try something else. And it's a great place to be. It's a great career with so many growth opportunities, and there's so many technological paths you can go down. But I mean, it's a great fundamental understanding of it, and it's helped me grow tremendously.
Very cool. You know, a lot of our audience members are not only new technicians, but I also have a lot of experienced technicians who are venturing out on their own and starting their own business. Now, I know that you have experience from taking Encompass from an unfunded startup to a multi-million-dollar operation. So what was your biggest challenge in that journey?
Well, the biggest challenge is cash flow, because as you get larger, you need to come up with more cash. You're floating that for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, depending on what that setup is. So really finding affordable ways to deal with cash flow. And, you know, God help you when those jobs start stacking up and they have to all be delivered in a certain time frame. So for a small business owner, cash flows is a huge issue. It's kind of been the same problem, just exponentially larger.
I'm on a Slack channel for low voltage people, and the same kind of thing. There are a lot of them are business owners, and one of the guys, they posted a question like last week or the week before, asking something about billing when they win a project. And my response was, bill for as much as you can get away for upfront, get that cash, get that process going, get it in the bank. That way, because if you can get that, if you can say 50% upon start, that's going to pay for your material and some of your labor costs, right? At least you got money in the bank. I used to work for a contractor. Their terms were net 90, period.
Yeah,
Net
absolutely.
90. That means you're floating the bill for 90 days until they decide, okay, it's time to pay it back.
And help you if you miss that draw for some reason, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But that is kind of a dirty little secret of the construction industry, is small business is fronting a lot of the bill for this construction project, whether it's plumbing or lighting, or it is in the hand of small business owners typically, and it's a lot of cash. So it'll be an issue when you're small, and it'll be an issue when you're big.
Right. Oh, absolutely, it will be. My dad used to run a trucking company, and that was his biggest thing, was cash flow. Yeah. He's always griping about it. So let me ask you this, because you and I both been in this industry for a while. What advice would you give somebody who's new to the ICT industry? They're just thinking about coming in.
Well, this is really general. There's someone that's just coming into the ICT. This is an era it's so unlike anything else that we've ever been in. When I was growing up, knowledge pretty much came from books or some sort of apprenticeship. Now, anything you want to learn is pretty much available. And if you shell out a little bit of money, you can get really well organized training such as Bixi, Avixa, CompTIA. There's so many platforms out there that are non-vendor specific. And then there's an incredible amount of vendor training. It is so accessible. Anyone with an internet connection can access it. So you really don't have an excuse anymore. If there's a will, there's a way. And I get a little frustrated with people these days because everything is in front of you. It's really up to the individual now, where you're from, your background, your geological location. It matters less. Of course, it still plays into it, but this technology has really given us an incredible amount of opportunities, and I'm not sure if people realize that.
Oh, absolutely. And you get the nail on the head, because I say every class that I teach, I always tell the technicians, if you've decided to make this industry your career path, invest in it. But before you invest in tools, invest in the knowledge. And investment doesn't necessarily mean money. There is tons of free information, tons of quality free information out there, right?
Yeah, you're never going to have your knowledge stolen from a job site.
Or leave it in the ceiling.
Yeah.
That's the
and
big
if you
thing.
find it in the ceiling, it's yours.
Exactly. And manufacturers, Cable Installation Maintenance Magazine, they all put out great quality content. YouTube's even a good resource as well, but you've got to be super careful with using YouTube as a resource for
there's no filter on it for quality of information.
You don't know the background of that person they might have just picked up that thing 2 minutes before they start filming, as opposed to somebody like me who's been around for 40 years. Right. So absolutely. And I noticed that you're an RCDD, you're a CTS-I, CompTIA certifications. It's kind of, you span a little bit of everything. They're almost all 3 different industries. Which of those certifications do you think has helped you the most in your career?
Well, to be frank, I have the exact same job that I started out with. So it hasn't advanced it there, but what it has done is opened a huge amount of opportunities. Look at this example. We're having a conversation, on a cabling podcast. Without this certification, I don't think I'd be answering your acronyms or, yelling at people to ground things, or, some of the other nitpicking that I really kind of understand why it's critical now, what problems it can. So that knowledge has all 3 of these, educational platforms really kind of cross over each other in different ways. But the RCDD really kind of led me to ground up understand things. So I mean, that's definitely, I think, the most important out of all of these.
How long ago did you get your RCDD?
Oh, pretty recently. That was 2020. So
okay.
A terrible year for the world, but for me, a pretty great year. That was my second greatest event that year. So
nice.
But very happy to get the RCD.
It's funny that you kind of mentioned that. The whole COVID thing, it could have either be a big hindrance or something that really, really helped you, right? So you got your RCDD, right? During the COVID, I lost 70 pounds. A lot of people are gaining weight, right? I went on keto. I lost 70 pounds. And then on top of that, I launched this. So, any challenge is what you make out of it. You can either succumb to it and say, woe is me, or you can view that as a challenge and you can, charge forward and take prisoners. It's really, there's a mindset. And a lot of people are really negative on the workforce. They say, oh, the millennials this, the Gen X is that, and blah, 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 blah. And I've met lots of great millennials, lots of great Gen X's, lots of great boomers. It boils down to the individual. You can't classify people in groups. You just can't.
Oh, no, I understand people, my senior, that, have these thoughts and feelings, either someone's positive or negative, and negative people can become positive. Right. Absolutely. I would say, I was an angry young man, at one point. And, that's long dissolved.
Good. Yeah, it's good to hear. As a senior manager there at Encompass Connects, what are your thoughts about the current labor market, as far as like the shortages of employees and stuff?
Well, fortunately, I just made 3 hires in the last week. So I always try to describe it to everyone else in my company as fishing. Either the catch comes in or you're bone dry. You never quite know what's going to be out there. But let's face it, seasoned ICT officials aren't looking for jobs. People with these skills are not, answering my entry level positions because they have excellent jobs. And, I could tell you, people hit me up on LinkedIn and offer me jobs all the time. The RCDD allows you to work all over the place remotely. If you like Revit, then you can work worldwide. It's hard to interest people, I guess, in an entry level telecom position. It's a little bit easier with AV because people like music and video. But yeah, fortunately, the tide seems to be turning a little bit, and I'm starting to fill these positions now.
So I loved your analogy about it's kind of like fishing. I love teaching in analogies because you can sit there and talk about a concept all day long, but as soon as you tie it in with something that the listener or the student can relate to, it helps so much. So when you did your recent hires, right? What, and I don't want you to tell me anything about the individuals, but what about their resumes that stood out that said, hey, I want to have further conversations with these people? What can somebody do to catch a potential employer's attention?
That's a really great question, because I think I had about a dozen guys to go through. So number one, the guy that immediately rose to the top held a CompTIA A+. That's a basic administration certification, but it's a very hard cert. I found it the most difficult because it was the most outside of my world that I was comfortable with. But I'm very glad I got it. So that, and it's a two-parter also. You have to go to Pearson VUE for 2 different tests, an A and a B. So the fact that he went out there and got that immediately put him to the head of the pack. In all honesty, college doesn't move your position in the application pile much. The experience I've had with hiring college graduates, even in something that's relevant to our field, has been kind of lackluster. The certifications prove to me that you went out, you accomplished something, and I kind of understand that it's not watered down. And it's also pennies on the dollar. I mean, you may look at like a Bixie training or something as, expensive, hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars even for your company, but if that's less than your textbook cost for college.
Right. Yeah. There's an old saying, and I can't remember who said it, so I can't attribute to them, but they basically said, they were talking about how expensive it is to train people. You said, if you think it's expensive to train people, how much more is it expensive to not have trained people?
Yeah, absolutely. And get it in on the front end, and it's not much at all. Avixa is an easy call for us. Bixie is an easy call for us. Same with CompTIA.
Yeah, some of Bixie's classes can range 2,000, 2,400, 2,500. But if you're a 20-something-year-old, 30-something-year-old, and you've decided you're going to make this industry your career, you're just here until the police academy calls you, right? That's a lot for somebody who's raising kids, but the return on investment over the 20, 25, 30 years for the rest of your career field will more than pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't think of a better way to basically walk yourself into, entry level 6 figures and getting some of these key certifications. I mean, don't take my word, just look on job boards across the country. They're hunting down these letters. RCDD is huge. You can work anywhere you want.
Oh, absolutely is. So let me ask you this. When you look at the resumes, do you do the quick once over to kind of yes pile, no pile?
Yeah, pretty much. They don't even get resumes at that point. It's me looking through the Indeed pile, and I try to classify who's got some sort of relevant experience. Sometimes people just hop around way too much. Word of advice: keep your resume a 1-pager if you can.
Good advice.
But yeah, I mean, it comes down to it. I'm in charge of making the best decision for the company. So, I really have to think about what positions we're going to be putting these people into and who's the best fit for it. And I mean, it may be something, just how you arranged a sentence. So over one guy, or, I really don't know. It depends how close it is. Sometimes it's real easy and real obvious. So, and I'm sorry we went off on a little tangent here, but so one candidate had the CompTIA A+. The other 2 individuals actually came from a music production school. And in AV, the kind of signal flow understanding, how dynamics work, and some of the effects that we do to signal processing kind of transfers over well. So I can give these guys a chance also. And then another one of them worked for like an AV staging company in a hotel. So that's kind of relevant experience. So that's why those guys were brought on, above others.
Gotcha. Now, one of the things I always tell when I get asked career advice all the time, and sometimes I put the questions in the live stream, sometimes I don't. It just kind of relates to me because a lot of times I get repeat questions. So I'm not going to be putting repeat questions in the live stream if I can remember.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So one of the things I always tell people is, they always ask me about the interview process. And as a hiring manager, I want you to tell me your thoughts or perception of this. So if let's say you and I are doing, I'm the potential technician and you're looking to hire me. I tell people all the time, not only you're being interviewed for the job, but you're also interviewing that company to see if they're a good fit for you. So don't sit there and just yes or no, do your research and find out about the company culture and the size and the direction they're going. And does it meet what you want to do? And ask those poignant questions. How would you take that as a hiring manager?
Well, you made a great point also. Do they see our vision? Do they understand where we want to go? Do they want to go for that ride? It's going to be more difficult than just clocking in somewhere. And I try to explain that right off the bat. We're a mom and pop and we're constantly at our limits. When I'm in the interview process, to me, I think I can teach any technical skill. What I can't teach is attitude. If you like to learn, if you love what you're doing. I've talked to lots of college graduates from audio production schools, and I even question if they like music. So I'm looking for someone that's passionate about what they do and has a good positive attitude, because those things I can't do a thing about.
Right. Now the AV industry, I would think that it'd be a little bit easier to find somebody passionate about AV because, you're putting in all kinds of cool electronics and you're putting up TVs and sound systems. It's a little harder to find somebody passionate about pulling Cat 5e cable. And unfortunately, I was one of those. The first probably 10 years of my career, it was a job, not a career, a job. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was just there to collect my paycheck, go home, feed my kids, and do whatever I did on the weekends. I caught the vision late in life. So how do you, as a hiring manager, how do you evaluate if somebody's got that drive?
I'm looking for them to be doing side projects of some sort, especially with audio. Do you record? Do you play out? Do you have a fancy stereo system? Did you wire your own preamp together? I want to see something that you're doing. Do you organize community? I want to see someone that does projects on their own, that's interested in life. I don't want to see someone that just doesn't know, shrugs their shoulders. Who knows what they do on the weekend. They're not going to further themselves. They're not going to take technological skills on. They're not going to be a problem solver in the future for them.
Yeah, as you were saying, the light bulb went off in my head because, for example, if you are on the tech team at your church running the AV and stuff, put that on your resume.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because a lot of people, they would shy away from it because it's religion. You're talking about a skill set that you learn. Because I learned AV and audio processing from doing tech team at church, and they didn't pick me because I knew everything about AV. Usually, in a church scenario, they just pick you because you're a willing body and you want to do it. Mm-hmm. And then you got to kind of fumble your way through it and learn it and stuff. And so it's that learning process. I'm kind of glad to hear you say that. So let me ask you this: what's new at Encompass? Any new exciting projects coming down the pike, or any new ventures you're looking to get into?
We have a huge amount of projects coming down the pipeline that are extremely exciting. Just some really great examples of integration in AV. But I'd actually like to talk about the future for a second.
Sure.
And I know that we kind of touched on the perceived millennial work ethic. And whoever's younger than them, I forgot what generation we call them. So there's a lot of skill sets that are missing there, like soldering, basic wiring, the ability to repair things because they're born in an era where that really isn't an option. But what they do have, and I'm going to need them to guide me through the future for this, is they understand software. And the future is defined by software. We're looking for new ways to take hardware out of the equation, things that we don't have to power, we don't have to manage, we don't have to worry about the environment. GPON networks are incredibly exciting for the future. Radio, advanced uses of radio. People don't consider radio, but to me, there's three mediums of communication. There's copper, glass, and radio, and we use it all the time. It just isn't considered much. But we can do amazing things with that too. PoE lighting, that's the lighting that we're under right now. We've been into it for about 4 years, but it's really starting to mature as a viable technology, not necessarily in my region, but all over the place. I know in Texas, they have an excellent example of a hotel that's completely wired up with PoE, the St. Clair, I believe.
It's funny you mentioned Texas and PoE because I saw a video on YouTube about a year ago, and I wish I could remember the name of the video because I watch lots of YouTube, as you can imagine. There was a warehouse in Texas that all of the
PoE
lights
Texas.
and all the fans were run over power over Ethernet. There was no electrical cabling in the warehouse at all.
Yeah, that's I even in the Sinclair Hotel, the hair dryers are PoE powered. Well, how do you do that? That's not enough power. Well, they're battery powered, and it simply charges it. So you have a high powered switch per room in a utility box next to your high voltage electric, and it just runs as a service.
I'm going to have to contact somebody over there and find out who designed that. Maybe do an interview with them.
I know those people. I could put you into contact with them. It's a husband and wife team, and they're both Cisco certified. They're very techie people, at the forefront of PoE. So
right.
Yeah, I can put you into contact.
Yeah, put me in contact with them because
Sure.
that's the hot thing right now is power Ethernet and building automation systems, because there's a lot of different kinds of devices that you can add to the network now.
And once again, where we're tapping the software aspect here is all of these systems, they produce data and they have open API architecture. So they're meant to talk to each other in new and different ways. So imagine your building engineer every day opening up his dashboard and seeing how a room was utilized, how much energy it used, and then maybe even use that to determine space usage. Your lights told you that no one came in this room for this period of time, so we don't schedule the maid to vacuum it.
Oh, that's a great tie-in. I never even thought about the ancillary effects of that.
What I like to tell people is think of it like a chef having ingredients. Each ingredient is wonderful, can be eaten on its own, has its own purpose, but the magic of a chef is combining these ingredients into an entree. And we're at the very beginning of this right now. Other examples of integration, you said you're on Slack. So if your company's security team noticed an alert, I have security cameras that can directly send video to that Slack channel to alert an item, and then you could follow that link to a live link to the camera. Access control integrates with security cameras now to give you another layer of protection. If the face doesn't match the camera image on the ID, it sets off an alarm.
We're living in exciting times. I'm telling you, there's so much new technology. It's even more of a challenge to stay current now. Well, that makes me question, how do you stay current?
Well, I have a luxury working here that it's part of my job to keep the company current, and ownership understands that I devote a certain amount of energy to picking up certifications, going to webinars, getting my CECs, and really trying to be a force and understand what's going on in the industry. So the company's great in understanding that actually takes hours off my plate. So I only started the certification road in 2018. So I did use a considerable amount of company time to invest to get these certifications, but a huge amount of personal time too. And I stress that to everyone that's getting involved in this is, it's going to take a lot of effort on your part, but you're investing in yourself.
Right.
And it really is an investment. And I can swear that it pays off.
Unfortunately, there is a certain portion of our workforce that they're not interested unless the company's going to pay for the certification and pay for their time to do that. The way I feel about it is there's got to be some kind of a mixture going on. The company's going to want to see some skin in the game.
That's correct. And that's kind of the solution that we came up with, a hybrid solution where we would schedule some classroom hours here for you to study and discuss things, but it's going to be a personal investment. But we do cover the costs of the classes and the testing. We would expect them to pay for a retest.
Right. That makes sense.
Fair's fair.
Yeah, exactly. Now, a lot of companies, when they invest in their employees like that, they usually make them sign some kind of an agreement. Hey, if you leave right after you get the certification, you're going to pay us whatever, and they usually prorate it. You guys do the same thing?
Nope. I'll just give you the old Western wave and let you go on your way. Maybe I'll cross paths again with you in the future. It's actually happened. We're kind of public facing now for being a small company. We're out there. We put a lot of things out there. People try to take our guys, and they're successful. I just lost our sales guy to a much larger outfit. And
the beautiful thing about that is, and I get this feeling from talking to you, Mark, is your business ethic, right? You're not out there to stab somebody else in the back. You realize that sometimes you're going to lose good employees, and as long when you lose a good employee for whatever reason, as long as it's an amicable split, right? This is a small industry. You don't know, that guy might be with your competitor tomorrow, but that might only last a couple of years. He might go work for an integrator or might go work for an end user. And next thing you know, it's like, all the other companies really ran me through the mill, but Mark didn't. Let's bring him in to bid on this project. Yeah.
You'd be surprised how things do work out like that. And the world is getting smaller. You're probably only 1 or 2 LinkedIn connections away from me.
Yep.
I would never poison the well about an employee, but there's people I would definitely not say nice things about it fast. I would just not comment.
Yeah. When I used to get those calls as a project manager, when somebody would ask for references and stuff like that, if it was, if somebody that I didn't really have anything nice to say, all I would confirm is hire date, fire date, and salary. And that's it. Done.
Yep.
Just there's when you put out bad energy, you're going to receive bad energy. It works that way.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you being the first contractor focus episode. That's pretty cool that you get to be the first, because you're like one of the most frequent fans that I have, and I appreciate you being.
I'm really honored. Thank you very much. I was looking forward to this all week. Hope to talk to you again in the future.
Oh, I'm sure I will. And make sure to keep me abreast of anything that if something comes up that you want to talk about, just shoot me a message, and we can definitely bring it as part of the show.
Oh yeah, so many subjects. I think maybe in the future we can learn something and have someone fluent in Python or something on and talk about a software defined future and a passive optical network based future, and where we would play into that.
Yep.
That's it for this episode of today's podcast. We hope you were able to learn something. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Also, leave a rating so we can help even more people learn about telecommunications. Until next time, be safe.